down all the way. And the swoosh, swoosh bicycle had been well oiled and was in good condition. I think that may help us to get a picture of some of us. I went to Africa in 1953 as a missionary, full of keenness, full of determination as to what I needed to do. But when I got there, I was almost overwhelmed. I was the first doctor to work in the region that our mission worked in. And at that time, there were probably about 500,000, nearly 1 million people in our region. And I'm the first doctor there, in an area 2 or 3 times the size of the British Isles. So it was a large area, very few proper roads at all. Most of what you worked on was mud tracks, sometimes having to carry your bicycle through what we call the diggies, which were swamp areas. And then one night I got this vision of, during the night, I'm sure it was a God-given vision, of having a central hospital, small hospital in the center of this vast region, training Africans to become leaders of dispensaries. And I saw this idea that I would open up dispensaries and clinics all over the place. I mean, if the hospital had been here at Ballymoney, then you'd have clinics down in Enniskillen, you'd have clinics down in Dublin and over across the water in Glasgow and Edinburgh, etc. And they'd all run these little clinics from the centre at Neverbongo. I had this sort of vision as to how it worked. In fact, it's amazing because in the vision, I got the idea of having a small aeroplane that would link us all together. And it's before the days of MAF. They came a year or two later. So it was wonderful how, as I woke up from this vision, I said, that's fine. It's the only way we can ever handle this huge job we've got to do. Who's going to do it? And it's as though the Lord said to me, you are. And I was horrified. But, okay, I had a vision. So we'll put it into practice. And so I drove them. I got a team of Africans around when we were going to build a hospital. We hadn't got a hospital at that stage. And everything, I drove them. I drove them mercilessly. I could work for 18 hours a day, so why shouldn't they? I could do without a midday meal. Why shouldn't they? You can imagine how popular I was. I had my vision, and I expected everybody else to fall into line with it. And then one day, various things had occurred. I was asked to go to see another missionary, an older lady, who was ill. And I cycled out, I suppose about 18 miles to where she was, and I examined her, and she was ill. So I then cycled back from her to the central station of our mission to report to the leadership that this lady out there needed to be brought in, to be cared for, and probably need to go to see some doctor somewhere else with more knowledge than I'd got as to how to handle the situation. I got to the office of my leader. I leant my bicycle against the wall, walked across the veranda, raised my hand to knock on the office door, when I realized I was overhearing a conversation. But it was too late to run. And in the office, my leader was talking to a lady, a single lady missionary. He'd sent for this lady from one of the far northern stations to come to see him to ask, would she be willing to pack her bags and to come to live at Neverbongo, where I was, so that I would not be alone as far as Europeans were concerned. And I heard her answer him, oh no, please, not me. I couldn't bear to work with her. That's a shattering experience. Not only was I unpopular with the workmen and people around me, but even our missionary staff didn't want to work with me. I remember going home from that evening. I just threw myself in my bed. I was crying. I said, Lord, where do I go from here? About a couple of weeks later, on a Friday afternoon, the pastor of our church, an African, a man about the age of my father, he'd seen that I needed help spiritually. I was getting irritable. I was impatient with people. I couldn't handle situations any longer. And he made arrangements with the leadership, and he came to us on Friday afternoon and said, Helen, pack your rucksack, get your bike, and come out with me to my village. You're going to stay with us over the weekend. When our pastor told us to do things, we did them. So I packed a rucksack, I got my bicycle, and I cycled out behind him. Again, I don't know how far, 12 miles, to his village. He told his wife I was coming. She got a room ready for me in their home. And he said to me, very politely, but firmly, you get yourself in there and get yourself right with God. Friday evening, all day, all Friday night, all day Saturday, all Saturday night, all day Sunday. I got nowhere. Heaven was like brass. I couldn't get through. I just knew I was a failure. I'd failed the church, I'd failed my family, I'd failed God, I'd failed the mission. I was a failure. I just knew it. I didn't have any right to name missionary the way I was behaving. But I couldn't see my way through. And if somebody had come to me with the same sort of problems, I'd have known what to say to them to help them. But it didn't help me when I said it to myself. Sunday evening comes, and I went out to the door, and out in the courtyard was sitting my pastor and his wife by the embers of the fire. I went out and I sat beside them. And after a long silence, I said, "Please help me." And he leant towards me and he said, "Helen, and he began to say things he'd seen in my life that were wrong. And everything he said, I knew it was true. But it didn't seem to help me knowing it was true. And then with his heel, he drew in the dirt ground a large capital I. We were talking Swahili, but he knew just enough to do this illustration. He said, "Helen, I think you know that person, I. I dominates your life. Everything is me, mine. My vision, my work, my task, my students." And he began to see it from different angles like that. I. He said, "I rules everything." Then he left me for a moment to think. Again, I knew what he was saying, but I couldn't find my way through it. He said, "Helen, I notice you drink a lot of coffee," which I did. I grew coffee in the garden. It was cheap. And he said, "Every time they bring you a cup of coffee, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I see you stand with it in your hands, waiting for it to get cold enough to drink. May I just suggest that every time you stand with a cup of coffee, waiting for it to get cold enough to drink, would you pray a short prayer?" And as he said it, he did it with his heel in the dirt ground at my feet. He said, "Would you just pray, please God, cross out my I." So simple, isn't it? It's children's theology, the crossed out I life. Is it what Jesus meant when he said, "If you want to be my disciple and to follow me, deny self"? It's what Paul meant in Galatians 2:20. "I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me." And that was back in, how did I say it, 1957, over 50 years ago. And I still pray that prayer from time to time. Please God, cross out my I. Let it be Jesus, not me. I think this is keeping the spokes oiled to the hub. Every morning asking the Lord, please God, today, I just long that my life would be pleasing to you. You'd help me to say what you want me to say, to do what you want me to do, to go where you want me to go, Lord. I want to be wholly yours throughout today, delighting myself in the Lord, asking him to take over and take charge. You know, there are silly little things, aren't there, that come. You're driving along the road, and I'm in the fast lane because I'm about to turn right. But there's a man behind me, and he's impatient to get through. He wants me to move over to the other lane. So he swings into the other lane, swings in and out in front of me. I think, oh, stupid man. And you know I always say man, of course. And you know the temptation's bang on your horn to tell him he's a stupid man. And in that second, sorry, Lord, please cross out my eye. Just pray for that man that he doesn't have an accident. It's in these little things. It's all the time. It's just keeping the eye crossed out. And I think that's when we really begin to experience, all of us, whether we're new Christians, old Christians, or not yet Christians, being complete in him. Hub's in place, and I'm oiling the spokes well to be in touch with him. Session 1.